Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me back. This is, I think, the third chat with the chief. So thank you so much. You handed me the mic first. That's dangerous.
No, that's good.
Yeah, I think in the past, I did a lot of talking. For those of you who don't know, I talk a lot. That was the joke and reference that I just made. So. I'm going to do a brief overview. I did that in air quotes because nothing I do is ever brief, but I'm going to try my darndest just to do a brief overview of what the police department's the activities in the last, I'd say, few 3-4 months, and then what we have to look forward to. Your police department, for those of you who aren't aware, is comprised of 21 sworn police officers, including myself, and 5 full-time dispatchers. We have the benefit of having our own dispatch center that dispatches for police, but it's also a service window, 24-hour service window for the city of Monona. So somebody coming in after hours, after City Hall is closed, some of you have dropped off your utility bills, some of folks have had questions about things that are happening in Monona post City Hall hours. They are not only employees of the police department, I consider them ambassadors of the city all throughout the day. But primarily their job is to assist in dispatching calls to the police department, relaying information back to the 911 center. Where the 911 calls come in, which is downtown in the city county building in Madison, and then those 911 calls then get transferred to us for police response. And they also communicate with other city departments. So in times of a storm where we might need extra plow on a slippery street that the officers are noting or that's called in by one of the residents, that dispatcher then wakes up DPW, right? And they say, hey, if they're not already out, they most likely are out, but they relay messages to those folks. And they're the ones that call me in the middle of the night if I need to be notified or need to come in for a significant event. The officers do a good job of calling me themselves, but they often are busy on calls, active calls, and so dispatch takes care of that. We have within our police department, we have some specialty assigned officers. We have 3 supervisors that sort of manage the day-to-day function of the police department, supervising patrol and supervising our investigative section. I call it a section, sometimes a bureau. It's comprised of 2 people. So think about all the crime that this small police department has to manage and all the follow-up work and all the, you think about some of the even high-profile cases like the shooting case we had late last year. That takes a lot of detective work. Your simplest, I call it simplest because in terms of just thinking about this case, you think it's simple, you get it done in a day or two, but like a fraud complaint, right? Well, that fraud complaint can take months to investigate. You have to subpoena records. You have to get video from the store if your credit card was used, et cetera. You have to interview witnesses. You have to track down the suspect. That takes a lot of work. So long story short, our detective and our detective sergeant stay fairly busy. They've been asking me for another detective since I started, right? But we're managing with what we have so far. We have our community relations officer who is a function of patrol, but his role is really to help me sort of navigate and making sure that we effectively communicate with the people who we work for, all of you, making sure that we think about new and innovative ways to conduct good community engagement with our community, and making sure he keeps me humble, right? Because I'm the chief, I sometimes see things sort of at a chief's lens, and I depend on him and other officers to make sure that they remind me of the basics. And the basics is law enforcement, keeping this community safe, conducting traffic enforcement, making sure that some of the riffraff that's happening across the street from us is out of our community here, because, and I'll go into that in a little bit, but we also have assigned to us a lieutenant who's overseeing patrol operations, an assistant chief of police, who is my right-hand woman. She's an amazing person who's been in this agency and has worked for you for 26 or so years. She's our most senior employee with a wealth of knowledge and experience. She also served as interim chief when Chief Ostrenga retired. So she's Assistant Chief Sarah Duman has done a wonderful job and continues to do a wonderful job. And then we have our wonderful canine and the handler, the human being too. But we have our furry missile, as I like to call him, Jocko. Jocko we acquired a couple years ago. He's a Belgian Malinois, which is a breed that's sort of up and coming for police work. They're a faster, nimbler. They have a lot more endurance than a German Shepherd. So most people are familiar with German Shepherds. They sort of look like a German Shepherd, a little more short-haired, a little more thinner, and way more agile. So Jocko has been a tremendous success story so far for this police department. It's the first time the police department has actually utilized what's considered a dual-purpose patrol dog. We've had a previous dog in the past, Maya, who unfortunately recently passed away. She retired and lived a happy life and passed away with her previous handler, who still works here. But she was a drug dog and a tracking dog. She didn't do any sort of apprehension work. She didn't do any protective work to protect the officer or go after suspects who are dangerous and could harm or kill a person. Jocko can do that. And Jocko has made the paper a couple times. I don't know if you've seen that, but that dog has, and the handler, it's a team, has had a great deal of success since we had him, since we acquired him. That canine program is funded entirely through donations. We would not be able to sustain that canine program were it not for some corporate sponsors. Mainly what we're getting donations from is the $25 here and there, the $30, $50 here and there from people like yourselves. So that's my pitch. We have a wonderful canine program that we're actually looking to expand. We have some great community partners. And so if anybody's interested, City of Monona canine program, you can donate if you'd like to help keep that program alive. That's the sort of function of the PD in a nutshell. We have a lot of things going around us, as I alluded to earlier. So, as you know, we're surrounded by the second largest city in the state that has their own share of challenges. Some of us call them problems, but the better word for it is challenges. It's the reality of a growing community, right? As I'm constantly getting reminded, this is my third year here. It feels like more than that because it's been a great experience, but it's only my third year here, and quite often I'm reminded how much Monona has changed and how much it's growing, even though the population isn't growing. Sort of things are changing internally, right? You have a newer group of folks who are buying homes and apartment buildings going up, and so the populace is changing, and especially from those people who work for the fire department or some of the people who've worked for the police department who've been around for some time. They've seen those changes over the years. But what's also changing around us is the Madison's east side and the south side, which we're surrounded by. And I bring that up because you have 21 cops who work in a community of 8,600, so really relatively small community here in Monona, but are surrounded by 200 and I think they're up to 80,000 people that live in Madison. And we own part of the major commuter thoroughfare, the Beltline. We have part of Highway 51. If you weren't familiar with our jurisdiction, Monona also includes part of Highway 51. We have, of course, Broadway, and we have Monona Drive, which is shared partly by the city of Madison. And we have tens of thousands of vehicles that travel through those thoroughfares every day that your small police department is responsible for making sure it's safe, right? Of course, we have help from time to time with our partners from, this is the part where I said it was going to be brief, but I'm not. We have our help sometimes from our partners from the State Patrol, from the Dane County Sheriff's Office, and I used to work for the Madison Police Department, and I used to be their traffic captain, so I know a little bit about that department and a little bit about traffic, right? And so I'm continuing to encourage Madison Police Department to do more enforcement. They share those roads with us. So we'd love to see the 515 or whatever police officers in Madison come and help out from time to time because we have our hands full. And we'd love also to pay attention to the residential streets. But as you can imagine, we're often pulled away because of crashes or more significant events outward from the inner portions of our beloved city here. So in Madison, you might hear some things in press releases and maybe future press conferences that I frankly disagree with. And their data, so they recently produced an annual report, the Madison Police Department. And in that report, they show their statistics and what crimes they've responded to, what calls they've had to respond to in the past year. So I'm talking about 2023. When you compare 2022 statistics from Madison, and you look at what they just produced in their annual report from 2023, their crime has increased. They've gone to more crime in the city of Madison. They have more homicides, they have more drunk driving offenses, they have more trespassing offenses, they have more property theft offenses. They're doing better in some regards. Their shootings are down seven incidents. But they still have a lot of shootings, right? And as I think most of you are aware, they had a couple of really horrific weekends, including homicide, including a mass shooting that happened in a downtown apartment. And there are shootings that happen all around us. And so what I'm getting at is that your police department has to perform their job differently than normal communities our size. We don't have the luxury of being Verona, for example, where we're quite removed from the city of Madison. They're almost touching Madison, but they're still sort of out there in the far west side. We don't have the luxury of being Cottage Grove, of which we share a school district, right? They're quite removed from the city of Madison. There's still some cross traffic, as we like to call it, and some criminal behavior, but not like us, who is in essence surrounded by this city. And so our tactics are different. Our approach is different. Some of our policies are different. If you haven't heard about our pursuit policy, which is quite different than the city of Madison's, because we have to do things differently. We don't have 100 detectives, right? We don't have the luxury of saying, oh, we'll get them tomorrow. Oh, we'll get them in a month. We just don't have those resources. And so people are going to continue to take advantage of that if we don't send a message and act smartly, right? We do things smartly. We're not dangerous. We wear cowboy hats, but we're not cowboys, right? I didn't wear mine today, but I'll wear it next time. Your officers wear cowboy hats, by the way, if you haven't seen it. It's their choice, so sometimes they choose to wear them, sometimes they don't. But at events, if you were at the Memorial Day parade, you probably saw all of them wearing cowboy hats. I like that because it distinguishes us from our partners. And it's a friendly approach, hopefully, that you are want to come up and ask questions about the hat, and you'll meet an officer with a smile, and they all love talking about these hats, and they all love talking about what they do and the service that they provide all of you. But we have to distinguish ourselves from Madison. That's why our squad cars look differently. That's why we wear these silly little hats. These wonderful cowboy hats. And that's why our policies are different, just because we don't have the sheer level of resources. Now, your cops are smart people. They care about you all. They care about the people that they have to protect, and they care about the perpetrators and the suspects that they have to go after, right? They're all very caring and compassionate people. We have something that Madison does not. Well, they have a pilot program for them, but only in one district, and it's called body cameras. It's what I'm wearing right here. It's not on, so I'm not actually recording you at the moment, so rest at ease. But you are on camera. That's going to be published on YouTube probably. This gives me, as chief of police, now I'm like Chief McMullen, who he won't talk about himself enough, so I'll do it for a little bit. He's out there a lot. He's on ambulance calls, he's on fire calls. He's a working chief. He's out in the field a lot. I'd like to say I do half as what he does, but I try to get out there as well. On the night shift, I make traffic stops. I don't recognize any faces here from any of my traffic stops. But I do some of the work too out there. That allows me to see the type of work your officers are doing. And when I can't be there, when I'm doing wonderful things like this, or when I'm doing administrative work, or I have to attend council meetings, in between that time, I'm on my little computer and looking at the video footage of all your officers in action. all of those recordings. I sort of sample each of those officers to make sure that they're living up to the standard that you all expect them to do as police officers, and they continue to show care and compassion. I've not had, we've had a couple of coaching moments, right? Because we're human beings, and cops see some horrible stuff. They can go from a horrible, horrific crash with injuries, and they're or a medical incident in which they're doing CPR on something, to some mouthy college kid who just stole something at Walmart, right? So as you can imagine, and that's all in one shift. So you can imagine the ups and downs of emotion that a human being, or particularly a police officer, would have to go through. Sometimes we just have a bad day. Sometimes, instead of saying, "Sir, you need to be quiet," we say, "Shut up," and we shouldn't have, right? So that's the feedback I'm giving from time to time. It's what I consider minor, right? If that's the worst thing I have to deal with, we're good. We're good. But still, needs to be corrected. We need to coach. We need to give tools, and we need to give training. And we do that. But what I'm telling you is that the significant and vast majority of the time, your officers are doing amazing work, showing care, compassion, and patience. We have a school resource officer who I didn't mention. We have a school resource officer who the city and the school district just renewed a 3-year contract, works in Winnequa and works at primarily at Monona Grove. I've gone on record at city council meetings and at the school board saying that you couldn't pay me enough to do his job. I'm allergic to children. You couldn't pay me enough, and I know many of you probably have kids here, bless you. You couldn't pay me enough to do that job. It takes a tremendous amount of patience to just navigate the teenage human being, right? And little kids I can do, but the teenagers are a little challenge. It takes a lot of patience, and sometimes you have to turn that cop hat off and turn on that social worker or parent hat on. Most of the time, when you're dealing with these young persons, and our SRO does a wonderful job of doing that. So much so that the school board unanimously recommended to approve the contract for the next 3 years. So much so that your city council unanimously recommended to enter into that contract. So I think we're doing good work. But we're not without our faults. We have more work to do. I'd love to be able to do more traffic enforcement, which is why I'm asking for a traffic officer next year. Should some of you, hopefully all of you who live in Monona, will vote. I can't tell you how to vote, but I'll tell you that I am asking for a traffic officer next year, because I think we have enough unique traffic problems here in the city of Monona that we need to provide a dedicated resource for. And that traffic officer will problem solve, they'll coordinate traffic initiatives, they'll coordinate with the State Patrol, Dane County, Madison. There's more effort and enforcement on our side streets that I get calls about regularly. And so I think there's a need there. But that is your police department in a nutshell. So I talked about crime increasing in Madison. What I can tell you, and I reported at our public safety committee meeting last night, is that crime in Monona, and because I think the work you all are doing and being vigilant, looking after your neighbor, calling things in, but it's a teamwork and partnership, the work your officers are doing, crime has been decreasing in Monona. Burglaries have gone down. Your violent offenses have gone down. We still have an issue with retail theft because guess what? We have Walmart, we have Menards, we have Kohl's, we have the Metro. People are stealing food and booze from Metro Market. So we still have retail theft, and that's a challenge that your little police department is tasked to address, but some of that's out of our control. We can't control the business model of Walmart and what they lock up and what they don't lock up. We can't control what they put at the front of the store versus what they put in the back of the store, but we've been working with them. But retail theft and traffic have been our biggest issues. Not to say that that's, not more work to accomplish, but I'd say that we're doing all of us we're doing a pretty decent job of keeping, again, some of what I would consider riffraff and some of the violent and dangerous behavior out of Monona. We did have a shooting in December of last year. We did catch the suspect, right? That was a drug-related shooting, not related to anything Monona. It was on Monona Drive. They just so happened to pick a place to interact, right? So, but that's ours, and that's something that we have to address and make sure that we do a better job of. So, okay, I'm going to open up for questions for the police side, and in my very brief time in which I spent speaking, and yeah, so he knows I can go on, and Brennan knows back there too. I can go on forever and ever. I'm going to open it up for questions on anything law enforcement, dispatch. Yes, I knew we weren't that shy. Okay. Can I give you the microphone, please?
Listen, I live less than 2 miles away from here. I was going to go to the McDonald's on Walkie Street. First of all, this car came right out in front of me, Woodman's, coming out of Woodman's. Then he blows the stop sign. He goes and he's going to go up on 51 North. He completely went through the red light. If that car coming this way and turning left on Walkie Street did not brake hard enough, I would have seen an accident. And then he went up on the Highway 51 North, and I thought, it's just an accident waiting to happen. So I'm telling you, even if you have the green light, watch. Because you never know. I mean, I seen it this morning.
Thank you, Sharon. Anybody else?
I'll respond to that, and then we'll take I'll be Vanna White. You can be Pat Sajak. Okay, we'll switch roles. So we see that often, and we tell people you have to drive defensively. Don't assume, right? Anticipate what the person in front of you and the person in front of them is going to do. But I'll also, what you described as reckless driving. We take reckless driving very seriously. If you've seen any of my media interviews or press releases, I really, really impress the importance of people calling that sort of thing in. And our officers know that they have it on my authority to initiate a traffic stop. And when the conditions are proper, so as not to unjustifiably endanger all of you, they will pursue those vehicles. So it's in the middle of the night, you got somebody that's blowing red lights, that's driving 80, there's no traffic out. Your officers, Monona officers, will pursue. They'll terminate when it gets too dicey, but they'll pursue. The problem that we're seeing with an agency that doesn't have a similar pursuit policy is that it's a free-for-all. And we're surrounded by people who have that mentality that, well, I just fled from Madison 2 or 3 times, so, I'll do whatever I want. No. You can do it not here. You can. I'd rather you not do it anywhere, right? And I'd rather you not endanger you who live in Madison as well. But you certainly are not going to do it in our town. We're going to make an effort, and then we'll use common sense and rely on policy and training to terminate. But we need to curb some of that behavior. It's getting out of control. And I've said that time and time again. So we ask people to call it in, get a plate. Monona will do the follow-up if we get that information. And I'm sorry you went through that, and I'm sure every single person in here has a similar example. If anybody's driven on the Beltline lately, see what I mean? Yeah, it is absolutely ridiculous. That flex lane, we call a stolen auto lane, right? And it's challenging for us because there's nowhere for the police department to sit and do traffic. Like, we can't sit on the side of the road safely. And even when we conduct a traffic stop, it endangers your officers because the lanes are so narrow, right? And there's no good shoulder for us to sit on. I think you had your hand up, sir, and I'll get back to you.
Mine is a much tamer question. But I'm a walker, and as I walk around Monona, oftentimes I see stop signs or traffic things that people need to see covered by bushes or trees, and I realize a driver just cutting through, because now that Monona Drive is so gets more crowded, people cut through Monona and they know which streets, and they wouldn't see it. And I'm wondering, is that something we should call in and say, hey, you can't see the stop sign at this corner?
Yeah, any traffic hazard you see, I don't care if it's a debris in the road, I don't care if it's a stop sign covered. Sometimes in the winter when we get the sticky snow, that covers the stop. Our public works department does a fabulous job of following up with that. And if it's something that the cop can handle, if it's after hours, that can wait till the morning, the cops will take care of it too.
For walkers, do you, like some people with their bushes grow out so far, you have to walk around?
Yeah.
then you're in traffic.
Call that in. Sort of casually get an address.
Well, what if, I mean, should you approach them and just say, by the way, I don't want you to have the police be the first one to call you?
Now, that's a judgment call, right? And it wouldn't be the police. We don't do code enforcement. It would be somebody at City Hall likely sending a letter or making a phone call. So it's not like you're going to send the muscle, right? Yeah. Yeah. But that is a judgment call. I mean, this is a very neighborly city, and when I do not like when there are simple disputes or there's simple issues that can be resolved between neighbors and they involve the police, because that just makes things worse, right? You send the cops to your neighbor? No. So I appreciate that consideration. However, I don't want you to be afraid of calling us because we might not decide to go. You might say, I need this person to be cited, and the officers have the discretion. They will make that judgment call. Even though we work for you, they will make that judgment call. Yeah, well, and sometimes we will make the time. We might not get to it right away, but there might be some time down the future or the next day where we'll be able to do that follow-up. But in that specific example, it's not going to be the police. It's going to be code enforcement that responds. Yes, sir.
I guess I have more of a comment and maybe a possible question, and maybe you can't answer it, but you alluded to the flex lanes on the Beltline, and I do frequently use that road, and people are crazy driving out there. You know, you got to be on guard all the time because they're switching lines and all that. But I'm just wondering why, in fact, did they put 2 flex lanes in? And it would seem to me that to be enough traffic to just leave them open all the time, because it seems to create bottlenecks, in my opinion. And I don't know. Maybe you have a better reason. I know the state controls that, but
That's a great question, and thank you for saying the State Patrol controls that, because let me tell you, when they were planning that flex lane, I was the traffic captain at the Madison Police Department, right? I had 70 people under me. I was responsible for traffic and enforcement in the city of Madison. So folks would come to me with questions like that. So when the state was looking to put in that flex lane, they did this survey and they talked to all the impacted law enforcement agencies, to include Monona. I wasn't here, but I was told that Monona was contacted. I certainly was contacted. I gave feedback, said, number one, don't do it. You need to leave an emergency lane for police and fire and tow trucks and all that other stuff so that we can operate safely. But if you do it, keep it open. Keep it open. The challenge, and I'm not a traffic engineer, so I trust the people that went to school for that stuff, right? And have that experience, is that the way it's designed is that lane collects a lot of debris. And in the wintertime, it's a challenge to remove that snow if it's not closed periodically. Now, do I think that perhaps the state can keep that flex lane open more or do longer periods? Or, when there is traffic congestion on a Saturday because of an event that's happening miles away, could they open it, for example? Yes. They do. I will give them credit. There's an operations center that does monitor it out of Milwaukee. They monitor it, and so if there's a crash, say on the number 3 lane, the curbside lane or something, they will open up that flex lane to merge the traffic away from that crash and allow public safety to do their job in that closed lane that is normally a through lane. And conversely, right? And so they monitor it, but I agree with you. And I don't have an exact answer as to why, except to say that it's been studied, and engineers have said that it's only to be open on a periodic basis. Jerry, do you have anything more? Okay.
Other than we were also the same response, don't do it.
Fire also said, don't do it. Yeah.
Some time ago, I stopped by the police department and I was treated to a very informative tour of the facilities. Very educational, I have to say. And I think both of you have indicated a willingness to have tours of your departments in the future. I'd just like to ask everybody here, would anybody be interested in that sort of thing? Yeah? Good. All right, there's some interest.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. And on that note, the building was built in 1958, right? 58 or 57? 57. I think Lambeau Field was built a year after that. It's a very old facility, and your police department and the technology we have, as well as your fire department, the technology, the apparatus, we've outgrown that building, as you can imagine. And those who've taken a tour, I see are nodding their heads. We've outgrown it in our space needs. We've outgrown it in some of our technological needs, and some, in terms of the police department, our legal requirements. For example, to keep juveniles and adult suspects out of earshot and eyesight of one another. We can't physically do that at our police department. We have interview rooms. We have 2 interview rooms that are separated by a small closet. If you put 2 suspects of the same case in each of those interview rooms, they can hear everything that the detective or officer is asking that other suspect. Right? I don't need to tell you that ain't good. That's not good. That doesn't help our case. So sometimes we have to keep other bad guy in a squad car, right? And that's not, it's humane because our squad cars are designed for that, but that's not comfortable, right? And when you're playing good cop, bad cop, that's not helping your good cop cause, right? When you're trying to schmooze a bad guy to confess, right? Putting them in a backseat of a squad car in the summer with the AC running. We need better facilities. And so the city acknowledges that, the mayor acknowledges that, the city council has acknowledged that, and they've actually dedicated funding to do a survey and have hired an architect to design a new police department. And there's a working ad hoc committee that has given recommendation to the council on which design to go with. Now, this is going to come at a cost. Of course, we're a small community, and it's up to you all to sort of either call your council member or the mayor or write in after you've had a chance to absorb this information and to give your opinion, yay or nay, on if you believe the police department needs it. But it's not just a police department refresh. It's for the entire City Hall campus. So City Hall will be redone, and they are desperately in need of conference room space. Your court doesn't have a courtroom. We utilize a conference room for juveniles or the municipal room and the library, which gets booked often. Your fire department, which Jerry will, I'm sure, expand on, is desperately in need of space. And I think we're due, and I think it's the proper thing to do. I will just say I am very, very proud to work here. I brag about this place every second that I get, and so does the chief. Chief will say he's got this term, it's my best day ever. Every day, it's his best day ever. And I'm surprised he hasn't said it yet. But
I haven't had the microphone yet.
when I give him the mic, he'll say it's his best day ever. I brag about this place. I love, love, love working here, and so does your staff. So do your employees. So do your department heads. The chief and I meet regularly with all of the department heads, including Diane and Jake from Parks and Rec. All of them really enjoy Monona. It is a special place. When we recruit, Jerry's probably the same, our facility is the last place we take somebody. You try to get them, hooked on Monona. Here are wonderful people that we work for. Here are the calls for service. Here's what you can do in your career. And by the way, if you want to tour the police department, 1 o'clock tomorrow, right? It is not the most proud place to show off, especially I'll face it, these young kids who grew up with Apple iPhones and technology. We don't have a lot of that techie stuff at our police department because we don't have the space, right? And that it's tough for us for recruitment because they look at McFarland, who has a new police department, or Mount Horeb, or the city of Madison, or Cottage Grove, who is getting a new police department. For those of you who don't know, Cottage Grove is getting a new police department. Our building was built in 1957, and it looks like it, right? So my ask of people is to please, thank you, do a tour, see it for yourself, right? If you don't want me to say anything except to identify the room and not give the sales pitch that I'm doing now, I'm happy to do it. Just walk you through, right? And you judge for yourself. All right, I'm going to wrap up here with one more question and hand it off to the chief. Thank you.
A few years ago, I took a citizens police class. I think it was 6 weeks long. Each night it was a different topic. Will that happen again? It was a wonderful, informative class.
Thank you. That's great. We call it a Citizens Academy. And that's an opportunity, like you described, for those people who we work for to come in to get an exposure as to what your police department does and what policing is like. Just a little taste of it, of what policing is like. That course takes a lot of resources, and it takes a lot of sort of human power to put on. And we've got a lot of tasks right now that we're trying to address. I think in the future what we're going to do is look to see if we can do a joint police academy or citizens academy with, say, Cottage Grove or McFarland, and just sort of combine resources so that we can get that done. Just the planning and the room reservations and the logistics of all that takes up a lot of time. I think that that's important, and it's something that we're looking to do in the future. So thanks for bringing that up. All right, so we'll be available after this formal presentation, but I wanted to leave at least 2 minutes for Chief McMullen.
I'll be brief. Well, I'm going to start out by talking about Chief Cheney, actually. He downplays his own role, but he is out there a lot, not just working traffic, which he does. I see him on calls. He's actually out there stopping people, giving warnings, giving tickets. He's out there with his staff on critical calls. He's out there a lot more than he may say himself. We're both working chiefs. So, you notice I've got the radio on. We've already had 2 calls this morning. I have my fingers crossed that we're good for the hour that we're over here, that we don't get any calls. But the police department is fantastic here. I've been doing this for 25 years. They are the best police department I've ever worked with, hands down. And it's not because I work here and he works here. I worked beside Chief Cheney for 11 years at City of Madison. You don't get the interaction between police and fire like we have here. You simply don't get it. All the officers are fantastic. My staff love our police department. They interact daily on calls, and again, outside of Monona, it simply doesn't happen. We're pretty tight when it comes to police and fire here. And I'll also put a plug in for our dispatch center, because we're dispatched out of Dane County. Fire and EMS gets dispatched out of downtown in Madison. Been that way for 20 years now. But we utilize our dispatch center daily. Our dispatchers, telecommunicators, are fantastic people. They do a ton of work. It isn't recognized very much, but I know from the police side, they love having a local dispatch center. I love being able to contact our local dispatch center if I see something when I'm out and about. I can call and get an officer dispatched, and it's miles and away better than trying to go through Dane County. So the benefit for a community like ours to have their own dispatch center, it's not even measurable. It's fantastic having it here. It's a huge benefit to our police officers, but from the fire side, we love having local dispatch. We get problems addressed far quicker than going through Dane County. But enough about police. I'm going to be brief. Your fire department, I'm the chief. Been there for just about 4 years now. Absolutely love it. Yes, it is my best day ever, every single day. My staff laughs about it. The police department laughs about it. City administration laughs about it. But it literally is my best day ever. Every day I get to come to work here. Fabulous community. We call ourselves a community fire department, not a city fire department. We're located right in the middle of the community. That's where we're staying. We love the amount of people that we get to stop by, regardless of our facility condition. We get parents and kids and we get so many people that just walk by because we're right in the heart of the community. So I have 9 full-time staff. We divide up into 3 shifts. Our staff works 48 hours at a time, so they live in our wonderful facilities for 2 full days on every shift. So I have three firefighter paramedics on every shift. We also have 7 or 8 part-time fire medics or straight paramedics that come in and assist when we have holes in our schedule. And currently I have 38 volunteers. I will start with the volunteers. Our volunteers are amazing. How many of you here know Dan Eckloff? A lot of people here in the community know Dan. He's been around what I consider forever. He's my fire department historian. He's in his 45th year as a volunteer. He's my primary assistant chief. Has lived here most of his life. He turned 70 this year, and is still more active than most of my full-time staff. He averages 2,200 hours a year of time that he gives to the fire department. He is always there. If we get a call this morning, he'll be there. He responds from home, and he is at almost every call that we go on. My other assistant chief, Bob Miller, lives down on Winnequa Trail. He's also in his 45th year. So they've both been here since 1978, providing volunteer services. And as a volunteer, Dan Eckloff actually was the interim chief here when Chief Sullivan retired, before they hired me. He stepped in and took the chief role as a volunteer through COVID. So very difficult time to be a fire department person, and he led the department through COVID, and they hired me in October of 20. My other volunteers, we have a bunch of new volunteers. So your Monona Fire Department does a very good job advertising itself, minus the station. We're very active on social media. We brought 12 new folks on since the beginning of the year. We're maxed out due to space. I actually can't bring any more volunteers on. I simply don't have the room. But as of today, I have 22 applications for new volunteers that want to come run here. There's a lot of folks in the Madison area that want to come run in Madison. They like how busy we are. They like it's close to home. And the two choices are Monona or Maple Bluff. Those are the only two agencies that offer volunteer opportunities in the Madison area right now. So we get a lot of applicants, which means we're, for the first time in 25 years, at a waiting list standpoint for volunteers, which is unique in Dane County. Most communities outside of the area here are struggling to find volunteers. Our volunteers don't just come and volunteer, they actually show up. Since the new folks we brought on this year, we're averaging 30 or 35 people every training night. So it's not just coming and pulling calls. They're here every Tuesday night, packing the station with 30 or 35 volunteers, which is amazing, again, in this day and age. Everybody's struggling to get volunteers. Everybody's struggling to keep volunteers. I haven't lost a volunteer in 10 months. They're here, they're pulling hours, they're covering calls. Today is a good example. I have a volunteer running on the engine today. So I have all three of my full-time staff today, so we're fully staffed. I have a volunteer here 24 hours running the engine, which means my full-time staff that would normally be on the engine gets to ride on the engine instead of driving it today. So if my volunteers take the time and effort to go through the training, they get preference on the engine. If they're here, they get a drive. And the full-time staff gets to sit in the officer's seat. I have two more volunteers here all day. I have a fully staffed engine crew today. On a Thursday, in the middle of the week, I have 3 volunteers here all day. I have another volunteer officer that's covering OIC, my officer in charge position, tonight. So all day long, we have a full engine crew, a staffed ambulance, and an officer on the car, which again is unheard of in Dane County nowadays, to get volunteers to actually come to the station during the day. And of all the departments that run like we do, the combination departments, we give them the least of any department in Dane County. Our stipends haven't changed in 15 years. So like I have 2 new volunteers here. For their 24-hour shift, they'll make $60. That's what they get as a stipend. And they're choosing to come here and take $60 in stipend instead of going to Sun Prairie and doubling that or tripling that. They'd rather come here. We are a very diverse organization when it comes to volunteers in particular. When we look at diversity and equity and inclusivity, my department as a whole runs 42% female, which beats, I'm not shy to say it, we beat Madison. Madison is very big on their diversity in their department. We have 42% of our people are female. We have a huge mix of folks of color, Hispanic, or I suppose the proper term is Latino now. We have a huge mix of different races that come and serve your community. that come in here, and spend time at the station and respond on calls. We've had 2 calls already this morning. We average anywhere from 6 to 9 calls a day, which in this size of community is, to be frank, ridiculous. The numbers we're way out of whack with other communities of our size. So if you look at Cottage Grove as an example, they have 9,500 or thereabouts. We're just about to hit 9,000 here, which when Chief Cheney was talking about population growth, when I started 4 years ago, the population was 7,600. We're just under 9,000 now in 4 years. So we've gained 1,500 people in 4 years. But Cottage Grove Fire runs about 280 fire calls a year. Last year we were just under 600 fire calls. So when we talk about challenges coming from being surrounded by Madison, that's part of the challenge. We get a larger number of calls. We have an older population, so when it comes to EMS calls, they're a more frequent user of EMS than younger folks are. We like that. We like coming out to see people. It's not a matter of the older population. We love coming out to see you folks. It doesn't matter when or how. We'd much rather see you like this than having to come out and take you to the hospital. We love seeing you at the public events. I mean, we'll be out. I've got 35 people that'll be out during the festival. Almost all of our volunteers are pulling 4, 6, 8, 10, 12-hour shifts down at the festival. Tomorrow we'll be down here with 35 people helping the festival set up. All volunteer. We come down, we help them get their fencing set up, their lights up, come down, have a good time, spend 4 or 5 hours, and it makes the festival happen. So we enjoy seeing folks out during public events. And I can't speak highly enough of my volunteers. They put in a ton of hours. Last year it was 12,000 hours of volunteer time for our community. They come here and provide us that time. My full-time staff, as of last month, May 21st, I actually marked it on my calendar, my full-time side was fully staffed for the first time in a year. We've been understaffed since June of last year. Full-time providers that do both firefighting and medical care are very difficult to come by nowadays. There's a decided lack of providers, and everybody's looking. So it's a stiff competition to get people to come to this community and join us as a career when every combination department that has fire medics is hiring. They're all hiring. So we have to be creative in how we get them here. The nice thing is once we get them here, we tend to keep them here. We've got a great community. We've got a great culture in the fire department. My full-time staff, as with our police department, we have a limited number of staff to do a whole lot of things. So beyond the fire calls, beyond the EMS calls, beyond the PR events and the community events, our firefighters do all the inspections in the city. There's 500 different inspections that have to be done twice a year. So they have to go out and do businesses, apartment buildings. So they're out daily doing stuff. Now you add all the stuff that has to be done back at the station. And that's why our volunteers are so important, that we get people more than just my full-time staff. Because when my full-time staff, 2 of my 3 people are running 6, 8, 10 EMS calls a day, there's no time to do anything else. That's all they do on their shift. So it's down to the one firefighter to take care of the station, to try and go out and do fire inspections, to do other things. So we're at the point that we need to add more staff. That's part of what Chief Cheney was talking about with his traffic. With the support of the community coming up in November, we would look to add 1 more full-time member that would kind of float between shifts to help fill holes and provide better staffing on days that we know we're going to be busy. And the other part of what we're asking for, which the city council was unanimous in this when I asked for it, Chief Eckloff is not replaceable, unfortunately. There are no volunteers that do what he does nowadays. Our goal is to get 24 to 48 hours a month out of our volunteers. He's providing over 200. And he's also a paramedic, which he did on his own as a volunteer to serve the community. That's simply not replaceable from within the ranks of the fire department. So one of the things that we're asking for is the ability to hire a full-time assistant chief. I generally don't talk about it much, but from where I started 25 years ago to today, the amount of paperwork and regulations and documentation, training, all the stuff that has to be accomplished is me. I am the only full-time officer on the department. All my other officers are volunteers. So once Dan retires, the goal is to get a full-time officer on board to help take some of the load. I love this community. I am so blessed that you all selected me to be your fire chief. It's a lot of hours every week. I generally run anywhere from 65 to 75 hours a week because there is just a huge amount of administrative stuff that has to be done to keep it running and to keep it compliant with state regulations, federal regulations. Billing for ambulance calls is a huge amount of time to make sure that everything's documented correctly before I send it out. So part of our ask is we know at some point, and there is no date for this, Dan can stay as long as he wants to stay. But at some point when he retires, I have to fill that void, and it's going to have to be a full-time person. The amount of work he does at the station, it's not just the hours that he pulls, it's all the stuff he does. It's the call response. He's completely in charge of all of our radios and pagers, and he knows more about vehicles and vehicle lighting than I ever want to know. He did it for 40 years for state patrol, for the city here. He did all the police cars for years. He did all the lighting on them, the radio. He did all of it. So his knowledge can't be replaced, unfortunately. So I'll finish up with the fire station. It was built in 1957. And by the way, I get all this from Chief Ekloff. Again, he's my department historian. I can ask him something. He's like, "Oh, that was so and so, and that was in 1963." And I'm like, I'm lucky if I can remember what I had for lunch last week. And he can pull names and dates. So that building that we're currently housed in, the bays that we use were originally the Public Works garage. It was given to the fire station in 1963 or 64, and it has not changed since. So what I can tell you from a fire station standpoint, and the police department may be similar, ours is the oldest operating firehouse in Dane County. Station 3 for Madison, which is on Williamson Street, is technically older. It was built in 1953, but it was purpose-built as a firehouse, and it has been remodeled 6 times, I think, since then. Expanded, added to. So ours is the oldest non-touched firehouse in the county. So I would ask that all of you come take a tour of it if you haven't. How our folks live and work out of this environment, I'm blessed that we have such good people here. Because when we talk about diversity, and 40-some% of my staff are female, the sole women's bathroom in our fire station is smaller than your kitchen area. It's about half the size of that. That is the only bathroom there for women. There was only one shower built in that facility. It's built directly off the men's bathroom and the shared bunk room. So for my women to shower in there, we have slide bolts to lock the door from the men's bathroom into there and from the bunk room into there for them to be able to shower. The city converted the janitor's closet about 15 years ago into another shower that's right off the main hallway, which is actually what most of the women use, is that one. Woefully inadequate for the current fire service. With what we're trying to do with diversity and inclusivity, it is very, very inadequate. I'm ashamed to walk in and see that bathroom when we're cleaning because it is literally one stall that is not handicap accessible and a sink. That's all that's in there. So I really encourage folks to come take a tour of it, take a look at it. So when you see why we're asking for a new public safety building, you can see it for your own eyes. I can do videos and I can explain it. It's different when you have to walk into that bathroom yourself and see that's it. That's all there is. Technology is a huge issue in the fire service. We have a lot of new things that we're required to use that we simply don't have the infrastructure for, that we patch together, that we piecework together to try and make it work. I've got 5 minutes left. I'm good. Real quick, future things that are coming that you all have blessed us with, by the way. We do have a new ambulance coming. It was ordered last year. It starts its build in September of this year and will be delivered in February of next year. So we replace our ambulances every 5 years. To give you an idea, for as small as we are and as close to the hospital as we are, our current main ambulance, which will move to a reserve role when we get the new one, has 85,000 miles on it. And our average transport is 5 miles. So you can have an idea of just how busy we are and how many calls that we take, that this ambulance in a city of 3.2 square miles that transports somebody 5 miles is at 85,000 miles already. So that one will be here in February 25. Our current main ambulance will move to a reserve role as a backup ambulance and a secondary ambulance, and we keep it for an additional 5 years. We try to recycle everything within the city of Monona, so nothing goes to waste. Everything gets recycled and reused. We also, the city council just approved our new engine. So our current engine 4, which is our reserve engine, is a 2004. So it's a 20-year life cycle on these engines. We did a lot of what I consider value engineering, of looking at what we had and what we actually need. And instead of the $900,000 estimate that it was going to be to replace it, that engine cost the city $620,000. So we brought the cost down almost $300,000. It's going to be a great engine. It'll do a lot for us. That'll be here in November of next year. Though that is a three-year lead time on fire engines at this point. So when I order something, it's for 3 years in the future. So the supply chain issues still haven't corrected themselves very well. Other than that, I know one of you folks had a question about, we've been working to secure a boat as well. That's been in the works for 1.5 years or 2 years. We're currently working with Dane County Board of Supervisors to try and get a boat donated to the fire department, one of the old deputy boats. Hopefully this fall we'll see some movement on that. What we find, unfortunately, with the lake that we have, for lake rescue to get here is about 20 minutes after you call. That's a lifetime if you're in the water. By the time the call gets processed, city fire gets dispatched, for them to get the boat to the lake and launch it and get across the lake, it's about 20 minutes. Our next closest boat is McFarland. It actually takes them longer because their new station is further from the lake. They're quite a bit further east than where they were. They house that at their station, so they have to get people to the station, get the boat, take it to the lake, launch it, and then come all the way up through the chain to get here. So we cover about 40% of the shoreline of Lake Monona, and we have much faster access. So our goal is to get something that both police and fire can utilize, not just for rescue, but for patrolling as well. There's a lot of things that occur that are within Monona's jurisdiction that either fall on Dane County or the DNR to try and come and mitigate, that if we have a boat that's available, that we can get people out on the water. When we timed it out, we can get a boat on the water in roughly 5 minutes. And be to our side of the lake in 6 or 7 minutes total, instead of waiting 20 minutes. And again, if you're floating in the lake, 20 minutes is a really long time, and you think nobody's coming because it takes a long time to get everything to where it needs to be. So we're actively working on that. That's actually one of our higher priorities, to try and secure that and make it work for the city of Monona at zero cost. The idea is that it won't cost the taxpayers. That's generally my goal, is to do what we can do and what we need to do with as little cost to the taxpayers as we can, because everybody pays enough taxes. So I'm happy to take questions. I needed to get up anyway. Sitting for a while, I start to ache a little bit. So
I fully understand what you're asking about your facilities. So I'm just curious, where would you locate a new fire station, police station, city hall? I mean, this is sort of a central location. Where would it be? Here in the park, perhaps?
I am happy to answer that question. And Chief Cheney will chime in if I misspeak somehow. The new public safety building plan is to put it right where the current one is. We're staying right where we're at. So with that, it takes some specific phasing because again, both, and I not to downplay our administrative site or the city hall site, but that's relatively easy to move. That can operate someplace while the work is done. With the police department and our dispatch center, that simply can't be moved. That we have to function while construction is going on, and so does the fire department. There is no place for the fire department to move to while it's done. So the current plan that's gone through the facilities committee is it would be a phased build, and what would happen is the fire department would be built up on the upper area where City Hall is now, and that would all get built. We would move up there. They would tear down the existing fire station, that whole area, build the police side, get that up and running, move the police department out, and then build the city hall wing last. And it all ties together. I can't speak highly enough about the design. I mean, the design, you all will be proud of this building. It is a fabulous, with the topography of the site and the curve of Nichols, the design they've come up with is simply amazing. It looks fabulous. So it's a phased approach, but we would end up in the same exact place that we are now. We've been working on this for over a year. Actually, and if I ask Dan, he's been working on it for 20 years. But this is the furthest along that we've gotten. So we've worked several months with city admin, the architects, all that, to come up with how do you make this site work? Because that way we're not taking more property off the tax rolls. We're still in a position where we want to be. Like I say, we're a community fire department. We like being right here in the center of the city, and how to make that site work. Because from the upper level of City Hall down to our driveway is a 14-foot drop. So how do you make that work? And I will say the architects have come up with a very nice plan to consolidate and make it look nice. I mean, it actually looks like a landmark building. In the renderings that we've seen. So we would still be in the same site as we are now. Anybody else?
They did the same site with the high school. My son was attending, half of it was demolished and
And it does work. I mean, it takes some specific work and phasing with all the different departments to make it work, but it is not only possible, but a good use of the site as well.
I think maybe we can work with Lisa and Diane to get a tour on the books.
Absolutely. So anybody that wants to tour police, fire, city hall, it's always good to see the city hall side as well, and what our administrative folks work with and what they're not able to work with. We'll work with Lisa and Diane to get some tours set up, and we're happy to welcome you anytime. There is not. You do City Hall and PD first, and then you may be able to drive around and come in through that lower level there, or walk around and come in through that lower level. The steps can be a bear. I walk them several times a day, so it is in the plans for the new building. So, yeah, yes.
with all the apartment buildings going in, are you gonna need, because I'm assuming there's gonna be a lot more people, a lot more calls, a lot more little fires in the kitchens. Do you need cranes, or how are you gonna be accessing all these floors?
We have a 95-foot ladder, which again the city has blessed us with. It was bought in 2007. I will go on record as saying it's the best ladder in Dane County. Love it. It is a fabulous piece of equipment. We can generally cover anything up to about 6 stories with that ladder. And it's a platform ladder, so that's designed to be able to assist people out into the bucket and lower them down. A lot of ladders are what we call stick ladders, so there's no platform.
Somebody out the window who's afraid of heights is
It means we have to carry you. And I would much rather have the platform carry you, because not that I don't mind carrying people, but if there's an easier way to do things, I'd much rather have you get out on the platform and lower you down. It works a lot better. Yes. I've been carried down one. It's no fun. So
And we have National Night Out coming in August. You'll be able to walk up and look at all these pretty things. And National Night Out, August 13th.
13th is
I think that's about right because it's opposite of the.
But
Yeah.
you'll look for flyers around here. It's a great time to meet your local fire and police and touch and feel those. Get a ride in the bucket, Natalie.
Are you sure? I mean, I'm happy to escort you and
Heights and
it's not the heights that bother me. It's the fall from the heights that bothers me. So, well, I want to say thank you. Again, I don't want to speak for Chief Cheney, but we're happy to come over and do this anytime you want. Same thing with tours. If you can't make the tour itself and you want to come over individually, come on over. Again, we're community departments here. So if you just want to walk up and take a tour and it's a random Friday morning, walk right in. We're there. If we're not there, we're on a call. So don't blame us if we don't answer the door. But if we're there, your folks are welcome anytime. This is your fire department. This is your police department. So anybody, whether they're here or not, Lisa and Diane will spread the word. You're all welcome to come anytime you want. We work for you. You own these departments. You guys have paid for these departments. So you want to walk up on a random day, absolutely. I'm happy to take time and give you a tour, even if it's one-on-one. I have no problem with that. We're very proud of what we do here, and we want to share it. So again, if the tours don't work, if that date and time doesn't work, show up. Just drive up to the fire department, ring the doorbell, and I will give you a tour on the spot. And I will go out on a limb and say any of my staff will do the same thing. They're all happy and proud to show what they do with what they have to work with right now. So everybody's welcome. Please try not to come after like 8 o'clock at night. They might be in the recliners watching a show or something. So, but anytime during the day, you guys are welcome to come and stop by and visit. So I will give it back to Chief Cheney for, okay, thank you very much.